Hi, everyone. This is Jenny Nash, book coach, and I'm here for the free webinar on 3 key questions to ask before you start to write. And I hope you guys are able to come into the room now and see the chat here. While we wait for everybody to come in and get started, I'd love to get a sense of who's on the line here and where you're from, and particularly what book you're writing, what genre you're writing in, and where you are in the writing process. If you're, just getting started, if you're in the middle, if you're doing revisions, if it's, fiction, nonfiction, memoir, would love to get a sense of who's on the line so I can speak to who's here today in particular and answer your questions in particular. That is what I hope to do. I don't think we have a really big group today, which is great because you guys can get your questions answered really specifically and get some good attention on that. So feel free to jump in that chat and let me know where you're calling from today and also what you're writing. I'd like to get a good sense of that. So I'm just gonna hang out here and wait for people to come join us in the room, and then we'll get started. I'm talking to you today from Los Angeles, where it's finally cooled off a little bit, and we actually had some rain the other day, which was bizarre. And we now are having this really weird problem of ants. Everybody I know, the ants are freaking out, and they're coming out of the woodwork. Literally, they're sort of taking over, and it's kind of odd. So I don't know what you call that, ant season maybe here in LA. So that is where I am and what I'm dealing with. Ant traps, ant spray, that kind of thing. If you're on the line and in the room already, I would love to hear what you're writing and where you're from so we can get a sense of who's here. I'm thinking that maybe some people are here and not wanting to jump into the chat, and I urge you to do that because we don't have a very big group, and I'll be able to help you more in person as we get going. So I'm going to give it a little time, a couple minutes more, and then I'm going to get started. So I think I will go ahead and get started. If you've just joined us, let us know where you're from and where you're calling in from today and what sort of book you're writing. And if you're listening on the replay, I'm glad you're here as well. So this is a webinar on 3 key questions to ask before you start to write. And I am an evangelist for this particular topic. The reason is that I have found in my own work that the only way to guarantee success of a book is to think before you write. And I've seen it with everything from New York Times bestselling writers to brand new writers, never ever writers. The whole idea that you would just start to write and plunge in and be able to do well, it's not true. I'm a book coach, of course, and I help a wide variety of people, and I've found that everybody can help by stopping and thinking about some key questions before they write. I am running a group workshop starting on Monday, September 21st, that is a series of 18 questions to ask before you start to write. And those are cover the whole range of things that you really have to know. It's a very comprehensive class, and we walk you through all the elements and give you feedback on them and train you for everything you need to know. And the 3 questions that we're going to ask today and talk about today are a small version of that. They're the best questions, and they're meaty questions, and I hope that you'll be able to take something away from this webinar today that you can really put to use whether or not you join the class or not. If you do want to join the class, I have an offer at the end of the webinar that I'll be putting up a special link that you can grab a discount and get a little bit off of that class. So let's get started and talk about why we tend not to think before we write? Why do we not do it? Why do we naturally not do it? And the answer, there's several answers. First is that we tend to be really blinded by the books that we love. The books that we read and we fall into and we escape into and we, lose ourselves in, we're not paying attention to how those books are put together. We're paying attention to the experience of enjoying them as a reader. And so we're blinded by the fact that the writer did a lot of work to craft that book, and that they thought a lot before they wrote it and did a lot of work before we even got there to join them. And we get sort of blinded by that love. The second reason is that we're completely hamstrung by our own burden of what we know about our story. Your story lives in your head. It's alive in your head. It's whole in your head. It makes complete sense in your head. And so you tend to think that you don't have to think that much about it. It's just there. All you have to do is put it on the page. The problem is that only a very small percentage of writers can do that well. Most writers can't. They can't get out from under the burden of their own knowledge without some really conscious thought. So that's one of the reasons why we tend not to think before we write. And finally, we are protecting ourselves from the truth about how hard it is to write a book. It's a really difficult thing to write a book. It takes your heart, it takes your soul, it takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort. It is not a small undertaking. And if we don't think about it, we can pretend that it's not that difficult. But the truth is that success, we think it's just a straight upward line and we just can walk that line and we can get there. But success is really very messy. And writing a book is not a linear process by any means. It's difficult, it's messy, it's tricky. And if we don't think about it, then we don't have to face that truth. But what happens if we fail to think before we write is we tend to waste years. And with book writing, it really is years of frustration. We tend to end up with a story that's got a sagging middle or a dull ending. We can't get readers to care. We can't get agents to say yes. Really, what we get is just heartbreak and rejection. And it's horrible. We want to avoid these things at all costs. And just a little thought is all it takes. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through these 3 key questions, which are these. Why are you writing a book? Who is your ideal reader and what does she need? And how do you know if your idea is any good? So the first one we're going to tackle is the big why. Why are you writing this book? And before we dig too deep into that, we need to know, well, what are we going to get from asking why? Why ask why? And there's 2 things, really. The first is you can get some very practical results. Asking why is going to help you understand your book structure and what structure might best serve the material. It's going to help you understand how long you might want to take working on this book, depending on your goals and what you're doing. You'll get information about how much money to invest. Do you need to hire an editor? Do you need to take classes? Do you need to hire an assistant to help you self-publish? All those decisions. And then the big decision about whether traditional or self-publishing is the best way to go. Asking why is going to get you to some of these answers. And I'm going to show you why in a minute. But the other thing that why gets us is it makes us start thinking on a really deep level about the work. And every story, no matter if it's fiction, nonfiction, memoir, self-help, how-to, any story, there's the surface level, the what of it, the how of it, the plot of it, and then there's the real story down below, the why. And if you start looking at your own why you're writing this book, that's going to open up the possibility of your writing at that deeper level, which is what readers really come for. There's a fabulous TED Talk that some of you may have heard by Simon Sinek. Oh my gosh, I'm saying it all wrong. Simon Sinek, Start With Why. And I highly recommend that you go listen to his TED Talk. It's called Start With Why. If you haven't already heard it, he has a theory that applies equally to, he's talking to corporations and businesses, but it applies equally to writers as well. And this is his gig. He talks about what he calls the golden circle. And on the outside is the what every organization on the planet knows. What they do. They make cars, they make computers. If you're a writer, you're writing YA fantasy, you're writing a memoir, you know what the what is. And the how, for writers, that would be how you're going about writing, what your process is. But the real benefit is when you get down to the why. The why is why readers are going to come to you. The why is going to shine through. The why is what we want. And so to get to the why, we are going to do two different things. On your worksheet, you're going to see that these questions are laid out for you. And while I'm talking them through, you can certainly take notes on that page and scribble on the back of them and think about what you're going to answer when it comes time to answer these big questions. And they are, why do you care about what you're writing? What exactly about it is motivating? And what's your deep purpose in writing it? So what's interesting about these questions is it's easy to answer, again, on the surface level. It's easy to give that very top level answer. And those answers might look like this. They have to do with your motivation. So, a lot of people want to write a book because they imagine they're going to make money, or they're going to, feel a sense that it's a prestigious thing they did. They might imagine that they will earn the respect of coworkers or their family or other people. They might have something to prove to themselves or to somebody else. Some people write because it feels good. They're trying to learn something about themselves, get something out that's bothering them, a good therapy. These are all really good reasons to write, and a lot of writers hold these reasons, but they're really, these motivations are only part of the why. They're only part of the why that we write. And what I really want to urge you to do is certainly start with this. When you're looking at your answer or writing down your answer, start with the surface level motivation, because it matters a lot and it can help you a lot to know that. But then dig down deeper. So what I'm going to do is just walk you through my answers to a book that I'm working on right now for myself. It happens to be a work of fiction, but all of these exercises are absolutely relevant for every kind of writing. It applies to everything. And so what I'm first going to do is I'm going to show you the what of my story. So that's just the plot level surface of what happens in it. And that is simply this. A heartbroken woman steals a dog to convince everyone to leave her alone in her grief, only to discover she is the object of a massive dog hunt that brings the world to her door. So that's the what of my story, the surface level of my story. And in order to get down underneath that, I'm going to ask myself then the two types of why questions. There's the easy part, which is the motivation part. And for me, my why is that I'm ready to write again after having a pretty severe disappointment with my last book. A lot of things didn't go right with it. It was a hard time in my career. And it's been about 3 years, and I'm ready to write again. And my reasons for that is I do have something to prove, not only to them, to the great them in the sky, whoever they are, but I have something to prove to them for sure, but also to myself. And what I want to prove to myself is I really love to write. I love to do this work, and I want to reclaim that love. I don't want to have what happened to me, get me down. And I can tell you very quickly what happened, so that we get that story out of the way. You don't wonder, oh my gosh, what happened? But it was just simply, it was a complex thing. But I wrote a novel, and my agent and I tried to go out with very big expectations that this was a big book and a career-making book, that I was going to break through from the mid-list with this book. And we had 6 major publishers lined up for an auction, which is the dream. It's when you tend to make a lot of money and get a lot of support for your work. And in the end, nobody bid on the book. So I went from thinking that I had it made to sort of having the rug yanked out from under me. And obviously very upsetting. So the why part of my motivation is there, and again, that's kind of easy. The harder part of why, which is what I want you to get down to when you answer your own question, is, you know, why this specific story? Why this story about this dog? And for me, my kids are both out of the house. One's in college, one's out of college, and they both live 3,000 miles away. And I live alone again in a house with just my husband. And it's really surprising how vulnerable that's made me feel, and how fragile it's made me feel. And I've just been looking around at my friends, at my family, at random strangers, and realizing how terribly vulnerable and fragile we all are all the time, really. And I wanted to write about this because by facing it in that way, by leaning into it, if you will, it's going to help me make sense of it. I tend to write to make things that are bothering me or bugging me or nagging me or sticking in my brain, or, you know, that it can't quite work out. And that's my deep level why. And I said earlier that your deep level why can help you with all kinds of things. And if you look at these answers, these whys tell me a lot about my story. The motivation part of this answer tells me who my character is in some ways. Oh, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The motivation part of my answer is about me and why I want to do this, and, you know, what's motivating me. And if I can tap into that motivation, it's going to really help me move forward. I talked before about knowing your why might help with your timeline. So in my case, if I'm trying to prove something to them and to myself, I probably want to take a good long time to make this book really good. I don't want to rush it. I don't have any reason to rush it. So that why is going to give me an answer to that timeline question. It's also going to give me an answer to the traditional versus self-publishing question. If I've got something to prove to them, I'm probably looking at traditional publishing. So that answer gave me some additional answers to my book project. The specifics to this story, the hard part of my why, the reason that I'm doing this, the real deep level reason, that's the one that gives me information about my story itself. I imagine I'm going to have a character who feels very vulnerable and fragile. I imagine that she's going to be tested in this way. So that helps with my structure. And it's in this way that the why can really help inform what you're writing and how you might want to be moving forward. And we'll come back at the end to the why, because the why reverberates through everything. But the second question we're going to look at is who your ideal reader is and what does she need. So what you want to do here on your worksheet is really dig down into this person. Sometimes people pick an actual real life human being that they know, you know, their Aunt Sally or their next door neighbor, or it might even be someone they ran into at a grocery store, but a particular person that they are writing to, that this book is being written to that person. It can help so much to know exactly what that person is all about. And by that, a couple of surface level things: how old is she, where does she live? But the big things we want to know about your ideal reader is what keeps her up at night. What is she terrified other people are going to find out? What does she want more than anything in the world? These are the kinds of questions that readers are coming to your book for answers. I love this quote about the world is asking only one question: can you help me where I hurt? I think that that's what you want to think your readers are asking. Can you help me where I hurt? Now, some people think, well, that doesn't make sense, because what if I'm writing about dragons, or what if I'm writing a comedy or a romance or what have you? Well, the thing to remember is that people pick up books for a really wide range of reasons. They come to books for comfort, to understand something. They want to feel a sense of peace. They want to be entertained. Maybe they want to forget about their difficult life or what's going on with them, or, you know, the fact that there's scary things happening in the world. Those are the reasons people come to a book about dragons or romance or what have you. They come for a reason. They want to know something. Maybe they want to be educated or illuminated by something. Maybe they want direction and how to do something. But you really need to know what your reader is looking for and what you're going to give them, what they're going to get when they read your book as a result of reading your book. And if you don't know that, it's very easy to wander and it's very easy to get lost. If you do know that, all you have to do is write a book that gives your reader what they need. And doing that is going to put you ahead of 99% of all writers. And it's absolutely going to show, and it's going to show from the very first sentence. I like to remind people that being an author means being an authority right from the very start. An authority about not only what your book is about, but what it's really about, the deep level why, and why your reader is coming to it and what they want. And knowing those things is going to help so much. So again, I used the story that I'm writing and sketched out some of the answers that you might write on your worksheet when we're finished here. So who is my ideal reader? I said that she was a 50-something woman who lives in a fast-paced world, a city or a hard-driving suburb. So she's someone quite like me. That's pretty typical for fiction, certainly. This ideal reader is desperate to keep up socially, physically, at work, at home. She's just desperately trying to keep up with everyone, and she's terrified that people will see how much she worries about slipping up, getting lost, ending up alone, all the things that that plague her. She's afraid people would know how afraid she is, basically. And more than anything, what she wants is to feel like she could survive the things she fears she can't survive. And my book is going to change her because it's going to show her that she can't. It's going to give her the experience of somebody who survived the things she didn't think she could survive. So all of a sudden, knowing who my ideal reader is, as you can see, gives me a really clear sense of what my book should be about, not just what should happen in it, but what it should really be about and what it should deliver, the feeling it should deliver to that reader. And knowing this is going to drive so much of what I do when I write. And I'm not going to get lost. I'm not going to be aimless because I'm going to be able to come back and think, well, wait, my ideal reader wants to know what it's like to survive the things she fears she can't survive. I better put those things in my story. I better get those things on the page. I better make it so that this reader gets that experience that she came to my book for. So I can use this as a touchstone or like a North Star to guide me. That brings us to our third question, which is, how do you know if your idea is even any good? And this is obviously a huge thing for writers to ask and to struggle with, and we all do it. And the first thing I want to say about this is to remember the exercise we did earlier about why. And when you're working on your worksheet, you've got the why right there. You can just flip back and look at it and realize that knowing your why is going to be the thing that helps you fight off doubt. So for me, my why, remember, had two levels. There was the level of my trying to prove something to somebody, and then there was the level of why I was interested in this specific story, what this specific story was, why it was capturing my attention. And if I start wondering, like, does anybody care? Is this anybody good? Is this any good? Should I keep doing this? I don't know. All I have to do is go back to those whys, and I know that I'm onto something because it's something I feel, it's something I'm motivated by, and I can just use that as the thing that draws me back to reality rather than letting my head spin off, saying, oh, nobody would care about a dog and a woman. And, that's actually probably true. Nobody would care about a story that's just about a dog and a woman, but they would care about a story that's about those other things that are the foundation of my story. So I can go back to my why and get rid of my doubt. The other thing about this third question of, is your book any good, is you can go out and get some actual evidence for this answer. You can do some research and get some knowledge, find some evidence that people want to read your book. And you do this by studying the marketplace and the competition and the industry as a whole. And I would say that the time that you spend on this work is going to pay you back exponentially. So writers who just sit and do nothing but write tend to really miss the boat in a lot of ways, because they consider their work in a way that it's very precious and fragile, and they don't think of their work as going out in the world, and they tend to write very differently as a result. But if you are paying a little bit of attention to the marketplace and the industry and the competition, you're going to have a mindset that your book's going to be part of that flow, that your book's going to be on the shelf one day with those other books. And just that shift in mindset is fantastically powerful. So the way that you do this, there's a few ways. The first is, I would recommend picking a couple industry sources of information and paying attention to them. You might get the magazine or subscribe to the website, Publishers Weekly, or Publishers Lunch is a website. I really love Shelf Awareness, which is a blog about, it's actually for booksellers, and also they have one for readers. I love the bookseller one because you can look at stories all over the country about bookstores, what events they're doing, what promotions they're doing, what troubles they're having, what authors came and did a great job, what the trends are. You can just get a sense of what it's actually like to be out in the world as a writer. Obviously, going to writing conferences can be fabulous. You can meet agents, you can meet other writers, you can get a sense of what's happening in the industry, what the trends are. And pitch fests have become a really big thing as well, and allow you a similar kind of exposure to what's really happening. So that's the way to get a general sense about the marketplace, and then you want to start getting a more specific sense about the marketplace. So I recommend really digging into your genre and knowing who your competition is. This is a link that I'm sharing for bookcountry.com. Bookcountry.com has a genre map that is clickable. You can click around and dig into your genre. It's a great place to start. And this is what happens if you drill down into the romance category. You get a list of the subgenres in romance, and you also get a list of some of the best sellers in the genre right now. And then you can start drilling down into those books and learning more about them. So what does this mean? What are you looking for? What are you trying to learn? Where do you go? I'm going to give you, again, an example of what I did for this book that I'm working on right now. So I have this book about a woman who's in grief. She's lost the love of her life, and she's freaked out, and it's a book about grief and regret. And lately there's a book that was just shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize. It's doing really well. It's called Did You Ever Have a Family by Bill Clegg. And I have not read this book. I haven't even read an excerpt of this book. I've just read about this book, and it sounds harrowing and fantastic, and it's on my to-read list for sure. But in terms of a competitive title and trying to learn more and drill down and get something valuable for me while I'm writing my book, I did some research on it. So some of the things that I did that I suggest that you do, on the worksheet, I ask you to pick one book like I did and really drill down into it. And some of the things you might do is go look up the book on Amazon, go look it up on Goodreads, go read some book reviews, go to the author website and see what you can learn. So I did this for Did You Ever Have a Family? And this is what I learned. First of all, I was completely blown away by, I gotta get to the slide. On Amazon, I found that an interview with Bill Clegg with the author Jill, I don't know how you say her name, O'Phil, I guess, who wrote The Department of Speculation. And The Department of Speculation is a fabulous book that I recently read, that is also about regret and love and marriage. And here was a whole interview with Bill Clegg and Jill, and it was such a thrill to read this and to see the questions she asked and the answers he got. It was so rich and meaningful to me and made me realize kind of the book that I'm trying to write. It helped me see it better. Readers also, I read on Amazon, readers responded to the deep grief and sadness of this book. They really related to that. They came to it for that. They came on purpose for that. And I also noticed that the book is already a bestseller in the category of women's fiction, with a subcategory of domestic. And I guess I didn't realize that that was a subcategory. So that was really interesting for me to see. The book, I read several reviews, and this book is told in multiple voices with one protagonist, and it's very fast-paced. And this was interesting to me because I've made a different choice for my book, but knowing that Bill Clegg made the choice he did made me feel stronger and firmer about the choice that I made. When I saw his reasonings and his choices, it helped me kind of cement down what I wanted to do. On Goodreads, Goodreads is great. Readers tend to be a little more emotional on Goodreads than they are on Amazon for reasons that I can't explain. But the readers describe that they read this book and they were in tears and they had deep gratitude for it. They had a sense of self-forgiveness. They wanted to really hold their loved ones closer. It was beautiful. And if I thought about what I want my readers to feel at the end of my book, those are some of the things I would like them to feel as well. But I also noted that some readers talked about how tired this book made them and how exhausted they were and drained they were by it. And that was interesting to me as well, because I don't necessarily want to write a book that does that to them. I don't think that my story will be quite so intense. And circling around what Bill Clegg did and knowing what his result was is just enormously helpful to me. I also read a bunch of reviews of the book, and I saw that the words that reviewers were using, like quiet, mournful fiction. And I happen to love quiet, mournful fiction, and so this kind of pleased me. And the idea then cemented in my brain that that might be what I'm writing. I'm writing quiet, mournful fiction. And so the point is that all of this research allowed me to better see my book and better know what my book is. I can picture it more clearly. I can picture its shape. I can picture the impact that it's going to have on people. I can picture where it's going to be in a bookstore. I can picture what my readers might say, what criticisms they might give. I have so much information that I can now apply when I go back to write my story. And that's just from, maybe an hour of poking around at these sites. So doing some research is the only way that I know to combat that fear and doubt that, is what I'm writing any good? If you just ask that question in a vacuum, all you're gonna do is wring your hands, and it's never going to be fruitful. But if you ask that question by saying, okay, this is the book I wanna write, what else is like it out there? What else is doing well? What else do people like or not like? Then all of a sudden you've got something tangible that you can look at, and you can start to say, hey, I think that my book actually is going to do just fine. I think it's going to have a place. I think it's going to be part of a conversation, and you can start to feel really good about it. So those are the 3 questions. And when you go to work on your worksheet, really dig deep and be very honest with yourself about what you want, why you're doing this, and what your reader is going to get out of it, what you think they're coming for, what you can offer them. And then finding the research to answer the question, you know, is my book any good? And you do those three things, you're going to set yourself up for great success when you start to write, and less muddled thinking. And if you want